Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is going to be about something that everyone uses every single day, whether you realize it or not. Negotiation. We're going to learn how to get what you want without being
a jerk.
Yeah, like that person that everybody avoids at parties.
Exactly.
So we're summarizing a bunch of information from different books to try to give you a really good overview of this topic.
Yep.
And to help me do that, I have an expert here.
Hi.
And this expert has some real-world experience that's going to blow your mind when I tell you about it a little bit later in the show.
It's true.
I'm going to keep it a secret for now. But let's just say they've been in situations where splitting the difference
Not an option.
was not an option. So
High stakes.
high stakes. So one of the things that I found really interesting is that a lot of the books talk about the power of no.
Yeah.
And you would think that if you're going into a negotiation, you want to hear yes.
Right.
But actually aiming for no can sometimes get you a better result.
Yeah. So actually, I find that a lot of the advice that you get about negotiation is very focused on getting people to say yes. And that can be very deceptive.
Right.
Because what you really want is you want someone to actually be engaged in the negotiation.
Right.
So when someone says no, that means that they're thinking.
Yeah.
So for instance, you could ask someone in a negotiation, do you just want to give up on this whole project?
Wow.
And of course they're going to say no, but it gets them thinking about, well, why wouldn't I want to give up?
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so it seems like that kind of leads into the next thing, which is that you have to be
Actively listen.
actively listening. Right?
Actively listening, yeah.
And I think most people are really bad at it.
Yeah. They're not good listeners.
They're not good listeners.
So one of the things that the books talk about is mirroring.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about what mirroring is.
So mirroring is basically you take the last few words of what someone says and you repeat it back to them.
And it may sound kind of silly, but it's a really powerful way to make people feel heard and understood.
So they know that you're actually listening to them and not just
waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly. So how do you use tactical empathy?
Well, the key to tactical empathy is to understand that people are driven by emotion. So if you can figure out what someone's emotional state is,
Yeah.
then you can use that to your advantage.
Right.
And the key here is to listen more than you talk.
Right.
So you're really paying attention to what the other person is saying and trying to understand how they're feeling.
So you can try to understand their perspective.
Exactly.
But it's not about necessarily agreeing with them.
Right.
It's about
understanding.
using that understanding to your advantage.
So there was a great example in one of the books about a pharmaceutical rep who was trying to convince a doctor to prescribe a new drug. And the doctor was really skeptical.
Right.
He didn't think that this new drug was any better than what he was already prescribing.
Yeah.
And so what the pharmaceutical rep noticed was that every time the doctor talked about his patients,
Yeah.
his whole demeanor changed.
Yes.
And so she said, it seems like you really prioritize the well-being of your patients. And by labeling his emotion, by calling out what it was that he was focused on, he immediately felt understood, and then he was more willing to listen.
Absolutely.
So that's a really good example of using that tactical empathy.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're in a situation where you actually need to push back a little bit.
Right. So how do you do that effectively without, ending up in an argument with somebody?
Well, that's where calibrated questions come in.
Okay. Tell me more about those.
So calibrated questions are basically open-ended questions that you can use to get the other side to solve your problem for you.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Give me an example.
So let's say you're in a negotiation and the other side is asking you to do something that you just can't do. So instead of saying, I can't do that, you could ask a calibrated question like, how am I supposed to make that work?
So that they have to do the work.
Exactly.
And they have to come up with a solution.
Right.
Interesting.
And it makes them feel like they're in control,
Okay.
but you're actually guiding them towards the outcome that you want.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's really amazing how much we actually communicate without ever opening our mouths.
Yeah, it's like this whole secret language
Yeah.
that we're not even aware of that's going on, but it's
Actually affecting everything.
yeah, it's totally influencing everything.
Yeah.
So how do we start to understand this secret language?
Well, I think the first thing is to pay attention to body language.
Okay.
So are they leaning in? Are they pulling away? Are their arms crossed?
Oh, so like, are they open or are they kind of closed off?
Exactly.
Interesting.
Because those little cues can tell you a lot about how someone is feeling.
So it's almost like our bodies are betraying our true emotions, even when we're trying to keep a straight face.
Exactly.
So is there anything else that we can look for?
Well, tone of voice is really important.
Okay.
So are they speaking quickly? Are they speaking slowly? Are they hesitant?
Right.
All of those things can give you clues about what they're really thinking.
So we have to listen with our eyes and our ears, not just our words.
Exactly.
What about those like micro expressions that you see like on those spy movies?
Oh, yeah.
Are those real?
They are absolutely real. And they
Yeah.
can be really hard to spot, but they can tell you a lot about what someone is thinking or feeling.
So we've talked about nonverbal communication, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of the actual bargaining process.
Okay.
How do we actually get what we want?
Oh, one of the most important things is to anchor high.
Anchor high, what does that even mean?
So basically, it means that you start the negotiation by asking for more than you actually expect to get.
Oh, so you're kind of setting a high bar.
It's exactly.
Isn't that risky? What if they just say no and walk away?
Well, there's always a risk, but the idea is that by anchoring high, you're setting a reference point,
Okay.
and it makes it more likely that you'll end up with a better deal.
So even if you have to come down a bit, you're still in a good position.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're saying don't be afraid to ask for what you want,
Right.
even if it seems a little unreasonable at first.
Exactly, because you never know what the other side is willing to give.
That's a good point.
And another important thing is to never reveal your bottom line.
Okay.
If the other side knows what your absolute limit is,
Yeah.
they have no incentive to offer you anything better.
So it's kind of like playing poker. You got to keep your cards close to your chest.
Exactly.
But it's not always about winning or losing, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's about finding a solution that works for everyone.
Absolutely.
So how do we do that?
Well, I think one of the keys is to be creative.
Okay.
So instead of just focusing on the price, think about other things that you might be willing to trade.
Like what?
Well, it could be anything, really. Time, resources, flexibility.
Okay.
Sometimes by getting creative, you can find a solution that meets everyone's needs.
That's a really good point.
And of course, one of the most important things is to be prepared.
Oh, yeah.
Going into a negotiation unprepared is like walking into a battle without a weapon.
So how do we prepare?
Well, the first step is to do your research.
All right.
Know who you're dealing with, what their interests are, and what their weaknesses are.
So it's like doing your homework before a test.
Exactly.
You wouldn't just show up to an exam without studying.
Right.
So we got to study for our negotiations.
Exactly.
But what else?
Well, you also need to know what you want.
Oh.
What are your goals? What are your non-negotiables?
Right.
And what are you willing to compromise on?
So have a plan.
Yes. Have a plan and be ready to adjust it as needed.
Okay.
Because things don't always go according to plan.
Right. That's life. So what happens if we've done all of our prep work
Yeah.
and we're in the negotiation
Yeah.
and it's just not going our way?
Well, sometimes the best thing to do is to walk away.
Really?
Yeah, not every negotiation is going to be successful.
Okay.
And it's important to know when to cut your losses.
So you're saying it's okay to walk away from a deal,
Absolutely.
even if you've put in a lot of time and effort?
Yeah, because sometimes walking away is the best way to protect your interests.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are afraid to walk away
Yeah.
because they feel like they're going to lose something.
Right. But you have to remember that you're not losing anything.
Yeah.
You're not getting what you need.
You're just protecting yourself.
Exactly.
That's a really good point.
And it also shows the other side that you're serious,
Right.
that you're not just going to roll over and take whatever they offer you.
So it actually gives you more power.
It does.
Wow. I'm learning so much.
I'm glad.
So we've talked a lot about the tactics and the techniques of negotiation,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I think there's a certain mindset
Okay.
that's really important for successful negotiation.
So it's not just about what you do.
Right.
It's about how you think.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And one concept that I think is really important is this idea of the Black Swan mindset.
Oh, the Black Swan mindset.
Yes.
I like that. Tell me more.
So a black swan is basically an event that is both unpredictable and has a massive impact.
Okay.
And in the context of negotiation,
Mm-hmm.
it refers to those hidden pieces of information
Okay.
that can completely change the game.
Right. Ooh, so you mean like you're in a negotiation and suddenly something comes up
Right.
that you didn't expect?
Exactly.
And it totally shifts the power dynamic.
It can, yeah.
So how do we find these black swans?
Well, I think the key is to be curious,
Okay.
to ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
to really try to understand the other person's perspective.
And not just accept things at face value.
Right, because sometimes the most important information is hidden beneath the surface.
Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah.
So it's like we're detectives.
Kind of.
We're trying to uncover those clues
Mm-hmm.
that can help us understand the situation better.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so we found a black swan.
Okay.
Now what do we do with it?
Well, once you've found a black swan, the next step is to figure out how to use it to your advantage.
Okay.
So it might mean changing your strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It might mean making a different offer.
Right.
But the key is to be flexible and to be willing to adapt.
So you're saying we need to be prepared to change our plans.
Absolutely, because in negotiation, things rarely go exactly as you expect.
That's the truth.
Yeah, so it's important to be able to think on your feet and adjust your approach as needed.
So we need to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be adaptable.
Yes.
And we need to be willing to use those black swans to our advantage.
Exactly.
This is fantastic.
Good.
I feel like I'm learning so much about negotiation.
I'm glad.
But it also feels like we're learning about life.
Right, because negotiation is really just a microcosm of life.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's about understanding people.
Mm-hmm.
It's about communication.
Right.
And it's about finding ways to get what you want.
While still maintaining good relationships.
Exactly.
I love that.
Me too.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
is there any final piece of advice that you would give to our listeners?
I would just say don't be afraid to negotiate.
Don't be afraid to negotiate.
Yes.
I like that.
Whether it's asking for a raise or negotiating a price on a car or even just talking to your kids about doing their chores. Yeah.
Negotiation is a skill that can help you get what you want in all areas of your life.
Right. It's not just about business.
No, it's about everything.
Yeah, it's about life.
Exactly.
This has been such a fantastic deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome.
And to all of our listeners out there,
Yeah.
keep practicing your negotiation skills.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more you practice, the better you'll become.
Absolutely.
And remember, even small improvements in your negotiation skills can make a big difference in your life.
It's true.
And if you're looking to delve even deeper into this topic,
Yes.
we highly recommend checking out some of the books that we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be sure to link them in the show notes.
Perfect.
And if you have any other books that you love about negotiation,
Yes.
please share them with us in the comments below.
We'd love to hear from you.
We do.
Yes.
And that's it for this week's Deep Dive.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.